Sarah Morice joins us now from Rome. Sarah, the results are still trickling in, but this has got to be a heavy defeat for the government, right?
Alajan, this is a big loss for the government. It looks like around 60% of Italians who voted in the referendum have voted against the Prime Minister's reforms. So they are sending a really strong message here. What that message is, though, is slightly harder to pinpoint. We've got an Italy at the moment that is deeply divided, and it appears that this referendum wasn't really about the constitutional issues that the Prime Minister was proposing. This referendum was about the Prime Minister himself and his performance, and he made it like that because he personalised this referendum when he said he would stand down if the reforms were rejected. So a lot of people took that as their cue or their opportunity to vote him out. And if you look at what's happening in Italy, you can see why people are divided. There's an economic problem here on a huge scale, very high unemployment, a banking crisis and a huge government debt. On the other hand, there's also a growing anti-government feeling, particularly because many Europeans or many Italians feel that Europe has left them in the dark when it comes to the migrant crisis. They're right at the cold front of that migrant crisis and they feel Europe is not helping them. So this, in a way, is going to be claimed by the populist parties or the anti-establishment parties that operate here as a big victory for that anti-establishment movement.
So let's talk about that. I mean, how is the political landscape going to shape up? You said we're talking about the opposition. Five-Star Movement has come out and said that it's ready to govern the country. Are they likely to gain the most from this referendum result?
Well, it's a pretty tricky one to answer. In fact, certainly they're the biggest opposition party here in Italy, and also they've been very hardly campaigning against the Prime Minister and his reforms. They didn't like them, and they do see this loss for the Prime Minister as a win for populism and for anti-establishment. But on the other hand, if there was to be election, and there is likely to be an early election next year because the Prime Minister, of course, has now stood down, would they actually win government? Could they win the election? That's the big question, and a lot of people say that's far from a foregone conclusion, rather. It is not necessarily likely that they would win. They have been campaigning against the Prime Minister in this referendum along with all the other opposition parties, so they'd have to split their vote there. And also people who did vote in this referendum against Renzi and against his reforms don't necessarily want to see the Five-Star Movement voted in as the leader of this country. Nonetheless, it has certainly put some wind in their sails, and they are calling for an immediate election as soon as possible. We don't think that's going to happen. We think it'll be some months before there is an election, but nonetheless, they certainly do have a fair bit of momentum behind them after this referendum.
All right, our Sarah Morice live for us in Rome. Thank you.